Okay, so you're looking to get a real grip on something complex, right? Understand it quickly, thoroughly, but without getting totally bogged down in all the details.
Exactly, that's the whole idea here.
And today we're diving deep into the bounty hunter Watts Bloods. It's a name with a serious history in Los Angeles. We're going to try and unpack what really matters.
Right, and to do that, we're drawing on info primarily from, well, a comprehensive Wikipedia overview.
Okay.
Think of it as us sort of sifting through that, pulling out the key things, you know, the stuff that gives you a solid grasp of the gang's story, its turf, the big events.
Get you informed without the overwhelm.
That's the goal.
So our mission today, a clear, concise understanding of the bounty hunter Watts Bloods, origins, rivalries, impact. Let's get started. Where does their story actually begin?
It all kicks off in Watts,
Yeah.
specifically the Nickerson Gardens public housing project.
Mr. Guards, right.
And this isn't just any housing complex. It's actually the largest government-owned housing development west of the Mississippi River.
Wow, okay. Largest west of the Mississippi. That paints a picture right away. A significant place.
Definitely. And when you think about that scale, you can sort of see how it might foster, well, certain kinds of group dynamics, gang formation being one of them.
And this isn't recent, is it? They've been around a while.
Oh, yeah, a long time. Sources say they started back around 1969, and by 1972, they were established as the Bounty Hunter Watts Bloods.
69, so that's, yeah, over half a century.
Decades of history there. And interestingly, they didn't start with that name. They were originally called the Green Jackets.
The Green Jackets.
Huh?
Then the switch to Bounty Hunter Watts Bloods. Why the change? Any idea?
Well, that transition by 72, it's often credited to the Believe founders, Gary Barker and Bobby Jack.
Okay.
But more importantly, the name change signaled their alignment, with the Bigger Bloods Gang Alliance.
Ah, connecting to the Wider Bloods network.
Exactly. So the color red, the B and H in tattoos, hand signs, that all ties back to the Bloods identity. The B for bounty hunters, specifically, that's their local marker within that larger structure.
Got it. So the name tells you about their roots in Watts and their connection to this bigger alliance. What about their territory? Is Nickerson Gardens still their main base?
Absolutely. The sources really emphasize Nickerson Gardens as their primary turf, and it's considered the largest territory held by any African-American street gang in Watts.
The largest territory in Watts, on top of being in the largest housing project, that's significant concentration.
It really underscores their local influence, yeah.
And in terms of numbers, it's not a small group either, right?
No, not at all. The estimate is somewhere around 2,000 members.
2,000, that gives you a real sense of the scale within Watts.
But it's also important to remember it's not like just one single entity. It's broken down into different subsets or cliques.
Oh, right, like different factions.
Yeah, things like the Lot Boys, Block Boys, Bellhaven, Ace Line, Deuce Line, Trey Line, 4 Line, 5 Line. Those kinds of names pop up.
So sort of internal divisions, maybe different areas or activities?
Probably. It suggests a more complex structure than just one monolithic group, like chapters, maybe, within the bigger organization.
Okay. And their influence isn't just limited to Nickerson Gardens itself. I think there was something about a high school.
That's right. The sources mention a presence at Centennial High School over in Compton.
Compton, okay. So reaching beyond Watts.
Yeah, it suggests their influence, maybe recruitment too, extends into neighboring areas, drawing in young people there.
Now, inevitably, when you talk about the bounty hunters, you have to talk about the rivalry with the Grape Street Watts Crips. Sounds like that's a huge part of their story.
Oh, without a doubt. The information we look at specifically calls it, and this is according to gang experts, the most violent and long-lasting feud between two gangs in Watts.
The most violent and long-lasting, that says a lot.
It really does. It's not just some minor beef. It's deep-rooted, historical, and has had a massive impact on the community there.
Was there ever a point where things cooled down? I seem to recall something about a truce in the 90s.
Yes, exactly. 1992, the Watts Truce. And for a time, it actually worked.
It did?
Yeah, reports say it led to a really significant drop in violence between the bounty hunters and Grape Street. It was a moment of real hope.
A chance for things to change. But
Yeah.
I take it that didn't last.
Unfortunately, no. The sources indicate that by around 2005, the truce had reportedly, fallen apart. Imploded is the word used sometimes.
And violence picked back up.
Tragically, yes, including a noticeable spike in homicides. It really highlights how fragile those kinds of agreements can be, especially with such a deep-seated rivalry. Maybe lack of resources to sustain it, too.
Yeah, that makes sense. And this conflict, it's continued more recently, too, hasn't it? There was that incident with the rapper.
Kevin, Flipside White, yeah, in 2013.
Tell us about that.
Well, he was associated with the bounty hunters through the group OFTB. He was shot and killed, allegedly by members of the Grape Street Watts Crips.
Wow. So a very stark, tragic reminder that this feud wasn't just history, it was still having devastating real-world consequences.
Exactly.
Okay, so Grape Street is the main rivalry. But they've had conflicts with other groups too, right?
That's true. The info mentions feuds with the West Side Piru, who are based in Compton,
Yeah.
nearby,
Okay, West Side Piru.
and also the 118 East Coast Crips.
118 East Coast Crips.
So while maybe not quite as intense or long-running as the Grape Street conflict, these other rivalries still add to the overall picture of, gang interactions and violence in the area.
There was one incident mentioned, I think from 97, involving a school bus.
That-
That sounded particularly awful.
Yeah, that was terrible. In 1997, some members of the 118 East Coast Crips apparently shot at a school bus.
Oh my God.
They were targeting reportedly bounty hunter members. But instead, they hit and killed a 17-year-old bystander, Corey Williams. She wasn't involved at all.
Just an innocent bystander.
Exactly. It's incidents like that, they just hammer home the indiscriminate horror of this kind of violence and the damage it does to the whole community.
Absolutely. And all these conflicts obviously mean regular interactions with law enforcement. Some pretty serious ones are documented.
Yes, definitely. And some with really severe consequences. Like in 1993, the killing of 2 Compton Police Department officers.
2 officers.
Yeah, during a traffic stop by a bounty hunter Watts Bloods member named Regis Dion Thomas.
Regis Dion Thomas.
And the sources note, these were the first line-of-duty deaths in the history of the Compton PD.
The first ever. That really underscores the gravity of that event, the danger involved.
For sure. And it wasn't like a one-off clash. There were other incidents.
Like what?
Well, in 2003, there were apparently 2 separate times when shots were fired at LAPD patrol officers inside Nickerson Gardens.
Inside the projects themselves.
Mm-hmm. It just shows how volatile the situation could be, the direct confrontations happening.
And law enforcement hasn't just responded to incidents, they've used other tactics too, right?
Yeah.
Like drug charges, injunctions.
Exactly. Back in 2000, the FBI successfully prosecuted, I think it was 30 members.
30. Wow.
Yeah, 30 members on federal drug violations. Crack cocaine distribution, conspiracy, that sort of thing. So it highlights the organized crime aspect, too.
Right, beyond just the street violence.
And then in 2004, they put a legal injunction in place.
What did that do?
It basically aimed to limit the movements and associations of known gang members within certain areas, trying to disrupt their activities and curb the violence that way.
Interesting. It's also mentioned that the name Bounty Hunter Bloods isn't just in Watts. That seems significant.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The sources say other street gangs in places like Houston, Texas, and Detroit, Michigan also use that name.
Huh. So what does that mean? Are they connected?
It's hard to say definitively from this overview. It could point to maybe a shared origin within the Bigger Bloods network way back when, or maybe it's just a name that gained notoriety and got adopted independently by different groups.
Kind of like a franchise, almost.
Sort of, yeah. It reminds us that while we're focused on Watts, this is part of a much broader phenomenon of gang culture across the U.S. They share symbols with the larger Bloods Alliance, maybe some historical ties, but each set, like the one in Watts, largely operates on its own day-to-day.
Okay. And finally, the sources mention a couple of specific individuals associated with the gang, people who might be known more widely.
That's right. The rapper J-Rock is mentioned.
J-Rock, okay. The musician.
Mm-hmm. His career brings that affiliation, into popular culture. It shows how these worlds can intersect.
And the other name?
Regis Dion Thomas, the individual convicted of killing the 2 Compton officers back in '93.
Right, him again. So one connection to music and culture, another to a really significant tragic crime.
Exactly. Shows different facets, different kinds of impact.
So, okay, let's try and pull this all together then. We've got the bounty hunter Watts Bloods, deeply rooted in Nickerson Gardens in Watts for, what, over 50 years now?
Mm-hmm. Since '69, effectively.
Their rivalry with the Great Street Watts Crips is, central, really defining, marked by intense violence, but also that period of truce.
That intense, long-lasting feud, yeah. And the failed truce.
And then numerous, sometimes deadly, interactions with law enforcement over the years, plus connections to drug trafficking and this wider network, potentially, of groups using the same name.
Yeah, and involvement in federal cases, injunctions against them. It's a complex picture.
It really is. This has been, a condensed look, but it feels like we've hit the main points, the core elements of their story from this source.
I think so. We covered the origins, the turf, the structure with the cliques, those major conflicts, both with rivals and the police and those broader connections. Hopefully listeners have a much clearer sense now of this specific gang and its significance.
Absolutely. Which I guess leads us to a bigger thought to leave people with. When you look at a group like this with such a long history, so deeply entrenched, what are the bigger societal things going on? The factors that contribute to gangs forming and sticking around for so long.
Yeah, the root causes: poverty, lack of opportunity, systemic issues.
Right. And then the flip side. What are the real challenges in trying to address these problems? What actually works or what might work in these really complex, long-standing situations?
It's a huge question. No easy answers there.
Definitely not. But it's something worth thinking about, beyond just the details of this one group, something to mull over after this deep dive wraps up.